is that I connect people directly with services who are being released from either jails, prisons, or hospitals. So my direct title is a reentry advocate at the Urban Justice Center. So I do a lot of individual advocacy. Then I also do a lot of systemic advocacy where I attend national conferences or panel discussions or things of that nature to really talk about the policies, rules, and practices that affect people who are living in prison, not only with mental illness, but for all people. Specifically, the two subjects that I specifically tackle often are um, uh, reentry and education in prison and solitary.
Okay.
Sorry, just putting the light on.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
All right, it might be better. Yeah. There we go. You see my face a little bit. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. And does that cover? What was the second part of your question?
Well, I just asked, what do you do? And you explained about what you do, and so the importance of why you're doing it. And then another question we had was, as social workers or professionals, what could we do to advocate for this population or cause?
Yeah, wow. That's a more complex question.
Okay.
You know, one, of course, it would depend if the person is in prison or the person is out of prison. You know, I think the number one thing that people, not just social workers, but advocates, I think that we can do to help the people that are currently there. So when I think about directly, right? So somebody reaches out to you from in prison, says, "Hey, this is what I'm going through, whatever." It's real good to have relationships with discharge planners.
Okay.
A lot of the things are outside of their control because they just follow the rules, but they do have a lot of discretion about helping people with housing, helping people with substance abuse treatment, helping people with their therapy, connecting them to therapy, and even mental treatment upon their release. A lot of times we find in our office at the Urban Justice Center, we find that that a lot of the challenges that our clients face upon reentering society could have been handled by the discharge planner. I mean, we have people who are being released without medications. We have people who are being released directly into shelters. You know, we see people being released back to communities where they don't have any ties to just because they were arrested there. And again, this is specifically to New York City, so I just want to emphasize that. But there are some trends, I guess, nationwide, which will also still affect you. And then another way, you know, and that's more direct, but a less direct way to help people who are currently incarcerated is to advocate for the policies that would help them, whether it's challenging agencies to take a better stance upon reentry, or put reentry at the forefront, you know, to use, you know, trauma-informed approaches, you know, where it upholds the dignity of the person who, you know, who is incarcerated, who is living with a mental illness. There are a lot of different ways. It depends, I guess, on the capacity that people can have and the students can have. You know, another way too, I guess I would say, to really connect with with that population. I mean, it's hard connecting with the population once they're currently incarcerated. A lot of times they have to kind of, you know, reach out to you, and then a lot of it's going to be situation based on what it is that you do. You know, but overall, being able to connect with people while they're in prison and starting that discharge planning as soon as possible and connecting with the discharge planner will make a huge difference. Because, yeah, we have discharge planners that are very lazy, but we also have discharge planners who want to do their job, except they just don't have the resources. So in a situation like that, being able to connect with someone from the outside who is knowledgeable and actually cares, you know, will make a big difference in the potential client's life.
Okay. Good. That you answered a lot. Okay. And another question was, is the U.S. justice system moving towards rehabilitation or punishment, or can they coexist with positive outcomes?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that.
Thank you.
I will say that when we think about rehabilitation and punishment, those kind of sound like oxymorons, like two opposites putting together. You know, like a, you know, like I don't know, like a good crime. There's no such thing as a good crime. I don't think that punishment and rehabilitation can coexist. I do believe, though, that we can still hold people accountable for their actions, but it's still take a rehabilitative approach in holding them accountable as such.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I think about punishment, I think about nothing but pain, retribution. I don't think about, it doesn't sound like punishment is coming from a caring place, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So can rehabilitation and holding somebody accountable coexist? Absolutely. And it's more than just word semantics.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when we're punishing somebody, we don't really worry about how they feel about it, versus when we're holding somebody accountable, we're saying, look, like you messed up and we're going to hold you accountable, but we're not going to do that in such an inhumane way, whether it's solitary or whether, here in New York, we ship people miles and miles away from their families, making it real difficult to see their families. Or even when they're in prison, some of the rules and policies in prison really make it difficult for that person to stay connected to their family.
Right.
So we get it. You committed a crime. You broke the law. We get that. And of course, we should hold you accountable. However, we don't have to treat you like an animal in order to hold you accountable.
Absolutely.
So that's the answer to that. So in line with that, thinking more critically and effectively around which policies can still hold people accountable for their actions, but also preserve their dignity and their human worth. And oops,
okay.
Sorry. Uphold their dignity and their human worth, in that process of holding them accountable. And the second, then your other question, as far as, are we coming to a place where, in the nation we see? Can you repeat it? Can you repeat the question again?
Okay.
The first part.
Okay. Let me look for it. I said, is the U.S. justice system moving towards rehabilitation of punishment, and can the two coexist with positive outcomes?
So the United States, I like to believe that the United States is moving toward a more rehabilitative approach.
Okay.
I think that, I'm 36 years old, and I can't remember the last time that a president, either visited a prison or has taken such a strong criminal stance against criminal injustice, whether it's solitary, whether it's education in prison, whether it's, not subjecting juveniles to the same rules that adults are subjected to. So definitely the president has set a tone where, people in his cabinet have followed. The Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, has followed with a lot of different reforms. We've seen legislation on the state level, or on a national level, looking at solitary. Like recently, Obama banned the use of solitary for juveniles. And we also see it in the smaller spaces, or the smaller to a lesser degree, in different states. Virginia did the same thing. Here in New York, we're seeing some progression as it relates to solitary when it comes to, we had a recent settlement, and now we also have bills that are being passed around, to have different legislators co-sign on it, specifically the Hawk Bill or the Hawk Act. So, in addition, we also saw the Pope also speak publicly about it against, mass incarceration. We're in a place in our country where we can no longer ignore the elephant in the room, and I think that people do not want to be on the wrong side of history anymore. People do not want to be on the wrong side of the issue, whether it's liberals or conservatives. For the exception of Donald Trump, that's a whole another animal. But as it is right now, today, I think that we're definitely moving in a separate direction. But with that being said, I also want to caution against incrementalism. And what I mean by that is that where we change a small piece of the puzzle, but the overall picture still remains the same. So going back to Obama and his recent ban of solitary for juveniles, that legislation really only affects 26 juveniles that were in federal custody in solitary at the turn of 2015. So we get it, right? Moving forward, no other juveniles will be placed in there. But for the time being, they only affected 26 people. So although that small piece of the puzzle is eradicated, nationwide, we still have 100,000 people that are locked in solitary on any given time. So that's what I mean when we change a small section of the system, but the entire system still remains the same, specifically for people of color. So we want to be mindful about that although we have seen some progression, that we can't start popping bottles of champagne yet. And we need to really use this momentum that I believe we have, to push for further reforms, to really put the nail in the coffin on mass incarceration. We really can use this momentum to do it. I don't know what the next presidential is going to bring, but I know as it stands right now, there's been a lot of changes, but we still have more changes to go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Perez. You have answered our question in depth and with very, very valid information. And before we end this Skype, is there anything that you want to add that you may be working on at this moment, or your biggest challenge or biggest fight that's going on now?
Yeah, so there's a few things to that.
Okay.
One, we're not right now. I'm also part of the campaign for alternatives to isolated confinement, and we have different chapters actually all over the country. I'm not sure. You're in Tennessee, right?
Correct.
So I'm not sure if there's a chapter there, but the campaign is trying to really end solitary, trying to bring it in line with the UN standards, which is down to 15 days. Right now, in certain parts of the country, people are locked in solitary for years at a time, 30, 40, 50 years. A lot of times these people did not start off with 50 years in a box. They started off with 1 or 2 years. And when we're thinking about people with mental illness, sometimes their behaviors are just a direct correlation or direct reaction of what their symptoms are. And unfortunately, we have a system that ignores that and just holds them accountable for their action and serves them as if they were sane, just like you and I. Okay. So I would want to compel whoever's watching this to really make a stance and call their legislators and say, I hope that you are not, supporting solitary confinement in this state. If so, I'm not gonna vote for you. Okay. And every individual vote is really, really strong. I want to encourage people to go on the CAIC website. Is nycaic.org. It stands for New York Campaign Against Isolated Confinement. And taking a look at that. Every 23rd day of the month, people in different states have some kind of action. It doesn't have to be big public. Some are very public, right in front of City Hall with big signs. And some are smaller. Some are just, every 23rd day, people might just, have a moment of silence or a fast on that day, or maybe post something on their Facebook saying, hey, stop solitary. It really doesn't, you don't have to be a part of the larger collective to do that. And the 23rd day stems from the 23 hours a day that the people are, locked in solitary. So I definitely am constantly working on that, not only as an advocate, but also as a person who did, 3 years in solitary myself. I advocate against that. In fact, I just recently wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Times, really clarifying some legislation that they got wrong. I also like to compel, future social work students or even advocates that are doing this work to really be mindful about language. It's the most simple, most easy way that they can uphold the dignity of a person and have an impact without having to go through a lot. And what that means is that sometimes when language is power, and within that power, it shapes our perspective of how we see people. So when we refer people as to ex-cons and convicts, we're going to see them as such, and if we see them as such, we treat them as such. So as a result of that, usually people that are formerly incarcerated would like to ask other advocates and attorneys and social workers and people coming into this field, to just refer to people as people. So it could be, a person who is incarcerated, a person who is formerly incarcerated, a person who was convicted of robbery, a person who this, a person who that. To really use that person-first language to uphold the dignity and humanity of the person we're talking to. Because when we see people as people, we'll treat them as people. And part of the problem with mass incarceration is that we don't even see the people as even humans. We just see them as animals and cattle and just lock them away and warehouse them for years at a time. So I really want to compel, people to do that. There's things that I can do to a convict that I can't do to a father. Even though they both might be the same thing. So I want to compel people to do that. And then lastly, I would say that there's this big divide between nonviolent and violent. People always say, well, we should do this for nonviolent offenders. And I agree to a large degree, except that when we say we should do this for non-violent offenders. What we're saying by omission is that other people or people who may have more violent crimes deserve it. Mm-hmm. So, in this fight, against mass incarceration, all these different kind of forms of such, we have to be very careful about dividing populations and kind of saying that one group deserves something while another group doesn't deserve something. And I get it. Are there Jeffrey Dahmers in the world? Absolutely. Should we have prison? I agree. I don't think that we should not live in a society that don't have prisons. Mm-hmm. But what I am saying is that we should look at the people in prison not only as human beings, but also in such a way that we can hold them accountable and still uphold their humanity without trying to divide whether, this person is a non-violent person, this person is a sex offender, this person is armed robber or whatever, and he doesn't deserve this, but this person deserves that. Mm-hmm. Mass incarceration affects people disproportionately, of course, of color, but also on a mass scale of people who are not of color. It affects every single American in this country because, people in prison are coming back into our communities. And when you think about it, well, at least I want to say nationwide, the last number, I think it was like 16 million. Mm-hmm. I think it was like 16 million people a year go through the system. I want to say 16. I think I got that number wrong, so don't quote me on that. But I want to say millions of people go through the system each and every year that are released, and millions of people go through the system each and every day. So these are people that are coming back into our society. So we want to think about that and treat people as if they could be our neighbor, because 9 times out of 10 they probably are. You don't even know it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Perez. I am truly honored for you to take this time and have this interview with us and give us this great knowledge and encouraging us to help with the cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I apologize for not being able to connect fully. And in the future, you have my email, you have my number. If you have any other questions, let me know. Now, I'll make myself available to you. This is important to me. So,
thank you.
And I'm always believing in helping people who want to help. So, if me talking to you gives you tools in order for you to do your job more effectively, or moving forward after school or during school or whatever to mobilize, then that's something I'm completely for. And please feel free to contact me at any time, right?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay. Later.